As excited as this, I think, as so many more people are this time around, I think. Then again, I can't remember the last time, but this time we know there were over 400,000 people, watching this on site, people from everywhere coming to see it again. This was like when I was in school, or we were in school, Carmi, right? They would turn on the TV so we could watch, a spaceship blast off. That excitement is back with this mission. So, first of all, tell me your reaction to what you've seen. And second of all, let's talk about this from a technical point of view. How significant is this?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I'm not alone. I feel like a kid just watching this. It's wonder. It's remarkable. It's the best of human achievement. And yeah, I mean, this is over 50 years in the making. And I grew up. I was really too young to appreciate what Apollo was. But as I'm a shuttle kid, and I always wondered. We went to the moon, and then we spent 30 years going round and round the Earth, and we couldn't repeat that feat. And so, to commit to going to the moon and not just visiting for a few days and coming home, but setting up a moon base, having regular flights there, having a constant human presence on the moon like we have on the International Space Station in low Earth orbit, that's a remarkable commitment. And then using that to, establish a baseline for going to Mars and pushing out into the solar system. The fact that we're taking these first steps and there's a Canadian who's part of the crew, I think that it speaks volumes about Jeremy Hansen, what a remarkable human being he is. It speaks volumes about Canada as a space nation, as a place where, the technology for doing this, the robotics, Canada created the Canadarm, the Canadarm 2. We were building the Canadarm 3 for Gateway. We're recognized and respected for this. All of this, this is vindication of just what a leader Canada is. It's an amazing moment for the country. And as a Canadian and a technologist and quite a bit of a space nerd, it's difficult to sort of watch this moment and think it isn't cool, because it is. It's beyond cool. And now I can imagine what it would have been like to be, able to, if you were around during the era of Apollo, what it would have felt like, that sense of magic sitting here on the ground watching this rocket fly. This is just the beginning of some pretty remarkable chapters in space exploration, and we're front and center.
By the way, to that point, right, this is just the beginning. That's in fact the case. We're going to hear from David St. Jacques in a couple of minutes, but this is not just, oh, let's do it again. We haven't done it in so long and we'll call it a day. This is the beginning of what's going to be, it would seem to me, a space program that mirrors what we started to do back in the 1960s and then just stopped.
That's exactly it. There is the very definitive roadmap. Artemis III, the next mission, will test the lunar landers in low Earth orbit. Artemis IV is the one now that's tagged to actually take one of those landers and land it on the moon with humans on board. And NASA has just issued an RFP for commercial providers to share their plans for rockets that they would use to pick up where SLS, the current mega rocket, leaves off. So it'll be kind of like the way they've contracted with SpaceX, where NASA no longer builds and operates its own rockets. It allows the commercial space to do that. It provides the budget for them to do that. So this is, this is just the beginning of a very long chapter. And the plan here is to allow private industry to really carry most of the weight, while NASA focuses on facilitating the research, facilitating kind of that roadmap for everyone to follow. This is incredibly exciting because it's really the first sustained commitment that we've seen from an American government in decades. And it is incredibly exciting to see. And it means, because Canada, we have the Canadian Space Agency, we are very close partners with NASA on this. It means that we're going to be part of that story too. And Jeremy Hansen is just the first of what I would expect to be many Canadians, both flying on these vehicles, but also providing the support from the ground, designing them, maintaining them, ensuring that they fly, and ensuring that they come home safely.
So, you mentioned about private industry getting involved as well. And obviously, whenever you talk about that, you talk about SpaceX and Elon Musk. How do they come into this?
SpaceX is one of the two companies that is contracted to provide services for landing. It's known as the HLS, the Human Landing System. So they're building a lander which is roughly kind of analogous. It'll do the same thing as the Lunar Excursion Module did during Apollo. So it'll look a little bit gangly. It was designed to detach from the Orion, and then which is the capsule, and then land on the moon, deliver the astronauts to the moon, and then when it's done, it'll fly back and dock again with Orion. And so they're one of the two companies. The other is Blue Origin, founded by Jeff Bezos from Amazon. So they're busy working on those designs now, and Artemis III is going to test either one or both of them in low Earth orbit. And so they're integral to it. And also, of course, SpaceX already provides low Earth orbit, both cargo and astronaut services to the ISS for NASA. So their Falcon architecture can very much support what we're seeing here. And also, they're developing the giant Starship mega rocket. And that's been test flying for a couple of years. But the plan there is for that to also be used for lunar missions and then eventually Mars missions. So SpaceX is front and center here. And whether you like Elon Musk or not, let's face it, not the world's warmest and fuzziest human being, but there's no arguing with the technology and the architecture that SpaceX has developed. And I think it's reasonable to say that a lot of what we're seeing now is because SpaceX has figured out how to reuse hardware so that it's reduced the cost of access to space, which means you can launch more mass, you can launch it more quickly, and then the cost per kilogram to orbit drops as well. That's feeding into this. It's allowing us to do things that we simply couldn't do before SpaceX came along.
So let's go back to Earth for a second and deal with something on the planet here, which is actually good news because, we complain about the cost of everything going up and up and up. And one of the things I think that got mentioned the other day is people are now looking at, I can't afford all these streaming subscriptions that I have. Well, the good news comes from Netflix, and this is specifically for Canada. What have they said?
So Netflix announced a price increase in the U.S. About a week ago, and everyone was worried that all the other countries would then follow suit. But the good news is Netflix in Canada has confirmed that this does not apply here. In other words, Canadian prices will stay where they are for the foreseeable future. It doesn't mean that they won't be increased again at some point. The last increase we had here in Canada was a year ago, January in 2025. But at least for now, our Netflix is actually cheaper than the Netflix in the U.S. And so we should be happy that we're getting, such a deal. Of course, Canadians are becoming increasingly concerned about the costs of streaming services, and I think that's part of it. I think Netflix and Apple and other streaming operators, Amazon Prime, they're looking at their pricing and thinking maybe they should slow down the increases simply because consumers are starting to pare back. The next increase could be the one that kind of pushes them to cut it off entirely.
By the way, as we speak, I just got an alert on my phone that says, you want to know how things are getting bad when you talk about having prices to go up? You know who just announced a fuel surcharge for Canadian sellers? Amazon.
Oh, no. Who?
Amazon.
Oh, no. Oh, that's terrible. You know what? I think that was inevitable. Their trucks are crawling our neighborhoods every day delivering. I think at some point we'd be naive to think that those costs would not eventually come back to haunt us. So, yeah, it uses a lot of petroleum, and unfortunately that sort of free next-day delivery or free 48-hour delivery, I think that is not long for this world.
3.5% surcharge as far as they're concerned. And this is going to be,
just the beginning if this continues,
going to apply to all those using Fulfillment by Amazon to sell on their website in the U.S. and Canada. So
great.
There you go. All right.
Yay.
Last thing, really, really quick. You got an issue with respect to a Google warning here. What's this about?
So quantum computing, which is sort of the next big thing in computing, and think incredibly powerful computers. The worry here is that once quantum computers become popular, they will be able to break encryption. In other words, all of the security features that we have built into all of our technology, once quantum comes along, all of those are easily broken. And so the general consensus was they thought that they call it Q Day. When this happens, they thought it was going to be at about 2035. Instead, Google issued a warning this week saying it's actually going to be closer to 2029. So everyone's kind of freaking out thinking the locks on the door are about to be easily picked. A lot of analysts are kind of going back and forth about whether this is kind of a sky is falling kind of moment. It is concerning, but the reality is we still don't have workable quantum computers that you and I can buy, and it isn't likely that that's going to happen within the next 3 years. So Google gets a really good headline, and it freaks everyone out, but I still think we can sleep at night because I think the experts are figuring it out as we speak.
Let's at least hope so, huh? Carmi Levy.
So, yeah. I'm crossing my fingers.
Good,
on this
me
one.
too. CTV tech analyst Carmi, thanks so much.
Appreciate it, Aaron.
Take care.
Thanks.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.